Hi, I'm Random Chris. You don't necessarily need to listen to my opinion. There's no good reason to really listen to my opinions. But my background is I was originally a musician. I was far too ugly, so I stopped. Did a PhD in physics and then became a computational psychologist at MIT.
Actually wrong with raising from the bottom left. And I know I'm speaking a little bit flippantly. They're not necessarily morons. They're just, yeah, you get my point. There's nothing wrong with raising from the bottom left, but if you are, it is going to be about hype. It's going to be, oh, this person's invested. Oh, this famous person's endorsed it. Or I was on the cover of Forbes. It's all hype. Nothing else matters. It's why some crowdfunding works when you've got a great video, lots of rewards. That's hype. It's not investment thesis, it's hype. So the key lesson to this, you must pick an audience. Who do you really care about getting money from? What does your story and your evidence, your objectivity play best to you? You know, do you have a very, very clear disruptible market? Do you have a very clear key innovation? If so, with objective proof in your story, you could target professional and experienced investors, the professional and startup experienced investors. But if you're saying, the market's a bit fuzzy, I don't fully know where it is just yet, I need to just do a bit more experimenting, which is totally valid, and it happens all the time, then you're probably more suited to the bottom right. You're probably saying to yourself, at this stage, I need a bit more R&D to really work out what the core market is. You need an answer, but it can be an answer that moves around, and that's totally fine. So that's the bottom right. Or if you know, well, I tell you what, I'm in legal tech because we know it's massive, and I've got 1 million users, I may as well just go for, the professional moron. I'm going to go for family offices. I'm going to go for banks. I'm only really going to focus on these things. That doesn't mean you don't have a key innovation. It doesn't mean you don't have founder fit. It's just where you focus, okay? Where you focus your story. And these are the things that so far, and it's not academically rigorous just yet, but I am writing many research papers on this. These are the things that appear in preliminary data to really, to close rounds, essentially, when pitch decks and pitches are led with this information for that category of investor. Know your audience. Any quick questions on that? I normally spend an hour doing that. Mal would like to speak. Speak, sir.
Hi, Chris. That was great. Thank you. I had a question for you on how you weigh up what to put on the slide versus not, for example, or what to talk about and what not to, because there's a lot of things you can put on it, even the stuff you just showed there, and there's also stuff not to put on it. In a 1-minute pitch, you may not actually get to put everything on it. So how do you weigh up what to put in it and what not to?
Yeah, so on the slide itself, that's a good question. And I touch on this a little bit later, but I may as well answer it now. The most objective and impressive thing, it doesn't really matter. What you're really hoping somebody will do is take a picture and then share it. That's what you really want, because that means they're going to come and speak to you afterwards. The entire point of this 1-minute pitch is to get a conversation. It's not to get somebody to go, oh, magic, have some gold. Like, it's not going to happen. And I know that's ridiculous, but some people really believe that's how it works. It is not how it works. This is how you get somebody to reply to an email, or to spend some time talking to you afterwards, or to try and find you in the networking at some point. You want somebody to take a picture of a slide and go, oh, that's impressive. And it has to be objective. It must be measurable of some kind. And if you're saying something that has some external validation, if they Google it or whatever, it comes up and it's true. Anything that might not be true immediately destroys your credibility. Anything subjective will only build credibility with people who agree with you. So be objective, and pick the strongest objective data point to whoever it is that you're targeting. So if I'm focusing on, say, the bottom left, I would say, as featured in Forbes June 2024, and then maybe a link to it, because they can click that link and go, ooh, that's nice. Or the bottom right, if it's founder fit, I would say former founder of company exited date. And you're like, oh, they've made a company and exited. That sounds good. You just want pictures, people to take pictures and come after you afterwards. It's all about confidence. Okay. So again, if you've seen some of the things I talk about, you've probably seen this little wiggly line. This is investor confidence. Now, this is mapped using a study that was performed by CB Insights, Harvard Business Review, and MIT Press. And they studied hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of startups that got funding and tried to understand, as a proportion of those who were previously funded, what proportion then fail before a major milestone. It's not complex, but it's sometimes a bit hard to get your head around. Basically, if this is 0 here, this is what percentage of companies at 0 die before they get to this. That's a major milestone here, by the way, major milestone. And then what proportion of those essentially get seed funding. And then this is a major milestone here. This is the proportion of those that failed before this major milestone. And this is the proportion of those who met that major milestone that got an A round, and so on and so on. So that's what this graph represents. And so this we infer as shareholder or investor confidence. What is the likelihood that somebody's going to give you some money, hence the smiley face, or take a meeting with the information you provide versus punch you in the face? Okay. All right. So it looks like this. These are the phases, the classic phases. There are areas of gray in this. There are exceptions to this. This is statistically true, not as a rule of law true. So, for example, here we do our seed round. The first major bump in funding and confidence is a closed seed round. So money has been put in, and a seed round was defined as money that arrives before that major milestone. And an A round was defined as money that arrives before that major milestone. So that's pre-A, that's pre-B. So a seed round. And then what tends to happen is that once you've raised, or maybe you didn't raise a seed round, but you had the confidence that you could have raised a seed round and you met all the criteria, what then tends to happen is you hit this wonderful point here, which often we call crossing the chasm. I hate that phrase with a passion, but it's what it is. This is what it refers to, where essentially you've built something, you've got some kind of early validation and proof, but you can't achieve the next major milestone, and so on. And these milestones are this. This major milestone here is your first organic returning user. Now, that language is very carefully chosen. I'll explain what that is in a minute. This is your first organic returning customer. Again, language is chosen very deliberately. This here is your first planned gross profit. And then likewise, this here, first planned net profit. Okay. So these are important because they say a few things. Let me come up with the last slide. Oh, yeah. So they say a few things. So in order for this to make a bit of sense, let me just define something first. A user in this language is the person who has the problem you're attempting to address. So, or person or company or whoever, like your user is the entity. I should use that word actually. Why have I not used that before? Entity whose essentially behavior needs to change. That's how user is defined in this context. And then customer is the entity, again, doesn't necessarily need to be a person, who commercially benefits. And the word commercial, so damn important, who commercially benefits. The classic business school example of this is education or university degrees or college degrees, as they say. The user, as we can all probably guess, is the person being educated. Their behavior is going to be changed as a result of that education, of that course, or whatever it may be. They're going to come in a moron, leave slightly less of a moron. The customer is often, not always, is often the parent. They commercially benefit because that person then gets a job. And so they are more profitable as a result of that purchase. The commercial value is the education. So that is the distinction between user and customer in the venture world. So when you're saying user, it doesn't necessarily mean somebody who's subscribed to a fucking SaaS product. What a user means is that's the person who you want to say, no, don't do it that way, do it this way. Or in the world of music and entertainment, a user is the person whose emotion you're trying to change. It's like, don't feel that, feel this. And if you're truly artistic, it's don't believe that, believe this. Okay. So some of the great artists in the world can go that deep into behavior change, which for any music people in here means music is not a product. It is marketing. The customer is the rights holder of that music. Anyway, I digress. So let's go back. Where was I? Come on. There we are. Still getting used to this. Okay, so essentially, to begin with, the goal of most startups, again, statistically true, not as a rule of law, at the beginning is to prove you can change behavior. And the ultimate evidence you have successfully changed behavior is users who return or refer, hence organic. And you want to see a graph that looks something like this, especially if you're on the top left of the investor profile matrix, that says users who return or refer is going up each time I measure. So that is a user who comes back because the behavior change affected them in a positive way, or have told others that this is where they come to get that behavior change. Okay. Likewise, customers who return or refer, pretty simple. People who pay and say, oh, what on earth? Someone's at the front door. Well, I'm not opening that. Customers, somebody who pays and says, I don't know how this company survives because I get more out of them than they get out of me commercially. So that is how you have customers who return or refer. There's a lot more theory around this graph, which I could go into at some point, but I don't want to waste anyone's time. So why does this matter? Why does understanding this matter in terms of this 1 minute pitch? Not only should it help you, generally speaking, as a founder, realize what's worth focusing on, like there's 0 point, no point whatsoever focusing on how good your gross profit is if you don't have any users who return or refer. Who gives a shit? No one cares, especially an investor. They're like, I don't care. So basically, if you are here, there is 0 point pitching about up there. What's the point? You're just going to sound like an idiot at Q&A. So you're going to start saying, yes, our business model is blah, 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 blah. And people go, okay, so how many customers have you got? And you go, well, I don't have any yet. And you want to basically say, oh, I should probably turn off WhatsApp. You should basically say, in Q&A, well, that's not impressive, then is it? What am I supposed to anchor my confidence in if you're speaking about a business model that requires customers you don't have? I don't want to invest in the land of theory. I want to invest in the land of progress, and it's very different. And this was a big mistake that happened last year. Last year? It feels like a year ago. It wasn't. It was a few months ago. Many people would start speaking about business and unit economics, which is important from a theoretical point of view, but it doesn't build confidence if you don't have the prerequisites for that to matter. Is in the world of venture, we call it playing startup. And this phrase that I love, I don't think I made it, but I don't know who I stole it from, essentially says entrepreneurs solve the problems they have and wantrepreneurs solve the problems they want to have. You must not be a wantrepreneur. I love that sound. I haven't said that in a while. I quite like that. It makes me cringe a little bit at times, though. Anyway, so if you are here, don't pitch there. Just don't bother. If you are here, then you can speak a little bit to there, but focus wherever you are, okay? Which is actually what I think my next thing is. Yeah. So if you are clearly in one of these positive upticks, you are having users who return or refer, or you're having customers who return or refer, or your gross profit is predictably and planned going up, or your net profit is predictably and planned going up, which, by the way, if either of those two things are true, what on earth are you doing here? But anyway, never mind. If you are in one of these places, that, in my opinion, should be the focus of your 1 minute pitch. Okay. If you know you have customers who are coming back, and every time you've measured it, the number who are coming back is increasing, I would open my 1 minute by saying, who I am, this is our mission, this is our market, and we have 1,000 customers. As of last week, we have 1,000 customers. Oh, by the way, 2 weeks ago, we only had 200 customers. And our retention is 65%. That's basically saying customers who return or refer. And what that does, people will want to ask you questions about that number, which you can then answer brilliantly. If you are pre-customer revenue, what would you focus on? Great question. If you are clearly here, and if you know you're in one of these wells down here, what's helpful? So if you're kind of halfway through building a product, you're like, I need investment to finish my MVP. By the way, the worst reason to raise money, because you're basically asking the investor to take on the risk that you were meant to take on but failed at. That's the signal it sends. I'm not saying it's necessarily true. It's the signal it sends. If you are in one of these wells in the bottom and you're trying to raise money, these are often called bridge rounds when you're in this kind of position. You need to focus on some kind of recent event that shows that all of a sudden you're about to uptick and head up. So accelerators, for example, their job is to catch startups somewhere on the inflection point of these curves and push them up as fast as possible. That's what an accelerator is supposed to do. Does it do it? Fuck off, does it? But it's supposed to. So you can tell I don't like accelerators, even though I founded some. So yes, when you're in these points, focus on something that shows that you are special, that results in this change in momentum. So I've done a few bridge rounds in the past, and one of the most successful bridge rounds I've ever done. It was between my it was after my A round. I essentially had somebody I wanted to hire, and I couldn't afford them, and they weren't going to take founder risk. They weren't going to work for nothing, but it was like such an A-list hire. It was just absolutely superstar. His name, and you can build the confidence that you're worth putting money into because there's been a material change of momentum, which cannot be executed without that cash. I will answer your question again in a little bit more detail in just a second, but the goal of your pitch is confidence. It's all about confidence. It's not called, you're not a con artist for nothing. Founders are the best con artists in the world because you believe you're telling the truth, when most of the times you're probably not. But you don't know that. You believe you're telling the truth. Founders live in the world, they live in the future, and they speak of the future as if it's the present day. So it's all about confidence. You have to generate confidence that you are worth spending time on and worth putting money into. Would I rather give my money to you or in my kids' what's called a JISA account? Where would I rather put it? Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, feel free just to unmute yourself.
Go for it. Amir.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for the presentation so far. So my question would be around the CRR point. If you are in that point, what would matter the most, the size of the revenue or the number of customers? Because if you are targeting price class.
That's a great question. You will get differences of opinion on this one particularly. For me, and an investor like me, so I am a casual, experienced investor. For me, what really matters is the rate of change. So I care that, say, last week you had 100, this week you got 500, next week you're planning 1,500. And it's not so much the revenue. What matters to me is the fact that they've paid and they're going to pay again. Whereas if you're in the top left of the investor profiling, so the less experienced professional investor category, they will care about the actual revenue number because that's something that they understand. When you have experience building a business, you know that your customers move around, they change. Like the thing that you sell now isn't necessarily the thing you sell tomorrow. And particularly when you're an early stage business or an A-round business, you will almost certainly change your product, or you'll almost certainly introduce a new product which is better, which will be the exit and enterprise value of your business. So as an experienced builder of companies, I know that's almost always true. So I don't really care about how much revenue you're making, other than how much runway it might give you. What I care about is, can you convince somebody to pay more than once? And are you getting better at that as time goes by? And what that signals is how good you are at making a product. That's the important bit. Not how good you are at making a business, but how good you are at making a product. So that's for me. Whereas if you don't have a ton of experience, you'll often just focus on revenue. So again, pick your audience. Hopefully that helps.
Just one more question, because if you're particularly early stage but targeting enterprise client, the rating, the converting rate is not as high, probably two per month or something like that.
Yeah. So you're speaking in particular, it was a little muffled, but let me see if I understood the question. It's when you're dealing with enterprise clients, that rate of change sometimes isn't impressive. Is that effectively the question?
Exactly.
Those who understand enterprise will know what is normal. And you can also speak to LOIs, MOUs, any kind of firm commitment or pilot projects agreed. From a product market fit point of view, anything that's not necessarily an experiment, but is the result of an experiment for them paying, is considered a returning customer. So I'll give you an example. So with DataSign, for example, who, oh no, don't want to say that just yet. With DataSign, a company I helped build in the very early days, there were basically a set of consultants around psychology in banking. And they didn't quite know what their product was going to be, but they did a whole bunch of pilots in turning bank statements into psychology profiles so they can understand their customer a bit better. Now, they did that so well that the likes of Lloyd's and BNP Paribas and a whole bunch of others said, I'll tell you what, we're going to buy a product if you make it that solves this specific commercial problem, whether it's uplift to other products, whether it's just better understanding the customers. And that was a repeat customer because they did the experiment, valued it, and then bought again. So those are valid in the enterprise world. In the consumer world, it's more obvious, it's cleaner, it's easier to see. But those who understand enterprise businesses or enterprise-led businesses, MOUs, LOIs, repeat contracts, anything that has a monthly recurring, paid cycle, all those kind of things are really valuable. Whoa, loads of questions. I will get to those. Let's move to the end. We're not far off the end. Oh wow, this is fast. So I now want to get very specific. What do I look for? I don't invest a ton, but I invest anywhere between 150 and 200 a year. I do a mixture of crowdfunding where I do silly £1,000 experiments, and my biggest average check size is between 20 and 25. So when I look, and I like investing anything from the idea to an A round. I don't tend to invest beyond an A round. What I look for, my concept stage criteria is pretty simple. It is, do the founders themselves fit the problem or the invention or the market? And what I mean by that is, if we had a chat and you told me your background, I'll go, that's why you. Not, you can't be a consultant. You can't say, I've identified a great problem. Here's all the analyses. Like some people like that. I don't. To me, that's you being a consultant. I may as well just go and invest in a bunch of developers and take your plan. Thank you very much. But if you can say, oh, I invented this thing, or if you can say, I spent 15 years in this market and I know every major player, I know them back to front, I could call them up tomorrow. Or, you could say, I've had this problem for 15 years and I've had to sellotape and silly string my own solution to it. That to me is like crack. I'll get to your question in a second, Charles. I also like founders who can prove that in the past they've overcome. I didn't want to write this down, but I do want to say it because this is very common across, in particular, angel investors and good VCs, in my opinion. They like founders who have undergone some form of trauma and come out the other side without being a wreck. It sounds so harsh, but it is the data plays out. It is so true. It is so true that those who go through some form of hardship that to others might lead them to really negative consequences, personal consequences, but end up coming out the other side and going, I'm going to start a business. It is so investable. And you can professionally demonstrate that by, talking about something you've achieved that's really hard, personally or professionally. Something really hard, ideally where some third party benefited from your success. The next thing I like is any form of objective, unique resource. Anything you can bring to the table that makes me go, oh, I haven't seen a founder with that before. And that could be a body of research. It could be a little invention. It could be an experiment. It could be a network. It has to be objective. If I were to call or test it, I would get the same result as you, those kind of things. And then very lastly, a very, very clear idea of the behavior change. So if somebody uses your invention or your product or whatever language you want to use, I don't care. If somebody engages with your startup, what is the clear before and after? That's what I care about. If you do those things and we like each other and I feel like I can add some kind of value or I can just fuck off and leave you to it. Yeah, right, check. Pretty simple. The seed stage is a little bit more detailed because you've had a bit of history now. So what really matters to me, the top one, the most important thing, is there objective evidence that whatever you have invented or designed actually changes behavior. And if you have any doubt on how to show that, users who return or refer will always prove it, always. But sometimes if you know the investor well and they know the problem well or the technology well, you don't need to show URR specifically. You can say, hey, look, we did this experiment. And as you can see, it's infinitely better. You do it. You use the experiment. You go. And they use it and they get the same result as you. I'll give you an example. Another company I helped build is called MemGraph. And it's the first in-memory graph database. It's anyone who loves nerdy things, Neo4j's biggest competitor now. And it's a wonderful business founded by Marco and Dominic, two brilliant human beings. I was lucky enough to join them early and venture build with them. They proved their invention, not necessarily through URR specifically. They did an experiment where they re-engineered the algorithm of a graph database inside of a GPU. This is back in 2016, I think. And they showed it was 10,000 times faster than the nearest competitor. And then all of a sudden, Connect Ventures was like, take my fucking money. Because they knew that if that invention is validated and true, all of a sudden a new market opens up. And it turns out to be true. So MemGraph is one of a couple that are the bedrock of real-time AI. The other thing I look for is hypergrowth in a market. So is the market small but growing really fast? Or is it big and being fucked up by regulation or technology? And then you as a founder need to have a clear mission. You can talk articulately about your invention and that you are suitable to the company in some way, shape, or form. It starts to get a little more hazy because I look at what you've done, not necessarily what you did before this. And then for an A round, it gets a lot more simple. Is there clear and objective evidence that customer growth is happening? Note for me, not revenue. It is the ability to demonstrate that customers return or refer. Okay, so retention or cost of customer acquisition is far less than lifetime value. That's another proxy for this. So on. I also like to see a founder prove that they can hire people better than their competitors, preferably even from a competitor. If they can see that they've taken, we've got the former chief science officer of OpenAI, I'd be like, shit the bed, take my money. Those kinds of things. Yeah, I want to know now that you're preparing to scale, and that takes humans who are better than you at the things that they need to be good at. clear market, roadmap of future features, and the stuff you did in the past before this company become far less relevant to me. Somebody put their hand up saying they want to speak. I missed who that was. Who was it?
Hello, it's me.
Hello.
I'm Nick. I just you mentioned about potentially hiring somebody from one of our competitors and whatnot, or potentially hiring better than our competitors. And I just had something popped up in mind. What if we are, for example, a newer company, and one of our competitors or multiple of our competitors' large clients are actually approaching us for our product and want to adopt our product? Is that would you say a key criteria to validate that we are indeed doing a better job?
No.
It's not. Okay.
I'll explain why. Like, first of all, it's subjective. It's subjective in the sense that they're approaching you. They want to talk to. I'm like, cool, that's great. Show me when their money hits your bank account.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, like, they approached us, we landed them as clients, and there's people actively coming towards us from our competition. That's what I meant.
Okay. So let's just be clear here. I'm sorry, not that one. We are speaking about this one. Customers who return or refer up here at the top. So if you are having people going from one competitor to you, they've used you and then said, hell yeah, let's do this again. Scrap that people who are using before, then that is evidence that you're somewhere in here. Okay. Obviously, the more people who do that, the more convincing it is, the more confidence you create. Okay. So this is your first organic returning customer. So that could be that what you were talking about.
Okay.
But if you're speaking about hiring, and which isn't necessarily the point you were making, but if you're speaking about hiring from your competitors, great talent, that's wonderful at the A round if you've done all the prior work. If you haven't, my instincts would be that sounds a bit premature. But this is now my opinion because we're talking about what I look for, not necessarily what the market as a whole looks for. So hopefully that adds some color to that. I'm not saying I answered your question perfectly, but hopefully it's helpful.
No, it was good. Thank you very much.
Your pleasure, Nick. My pleasure, Nick. So a clear market as before, a roadmap of future products, whatever. And note we have moved away from past experience before the startup, because if you're at the A stage, I'm only really now investing in this business. I'm not really investing in the founder specifically. The founders are, of course, essential. They are. I don't want to minimize them. I'm just saying the burden of proof shifts to execution and shifts away from personal story. And then at the very end, I don't tend to invest in growth stage. I've only done it once. The only thing that matters is profit. And the reason, gross profit is very specific, by the way, not net profit. It's gross profit plus potential acquirers. What gross profit signals to an investor is that you know how to make a product for less than it costs. So you know how to sell a product for more than it costs you to make it, which is surprisingly is really hard. It's really hard, especially when you're prototyping. You make something that costs loads of money to make, and you know people want it. They will pay a certain price for it, but you're making a loss every time. Absolutely fine, to the A round, and even at the A round, that's fine. What's not fine is a B round where you're constantly losing money on production. It's just like, absolutely not. That's me literally putting money onto a fire. I may as well take all the money I've got, turn it into £5 notes, pour petrol on it, set it on fire, then piss on it. That's essentially what that's doing if you don't have gross profit at a B round or a growth stage. So somebody put their hand up to speak. Forgive me, I didn't know who it was. Speak now or hold your peace. Cool. Hold your peace. Recap then. We're coming to the end. Wow, that was much better time than I thought. So let's recap. Your slide a few simple facts, figures, or diagrams. You can have a combination, of course, but it has to be objective. You have to think about the person who's taking a picture, and you need to remember as well, which I didn't say earlier, the next person who comes on will erase the memory of you. Okay? The second they start talking, particularly if the audience is listening, which they're not guaranteed to, but if they are listening, if you've just come off, they'll forget all about you. So you have to grab their attention there and then. Make sure your slide is something to take a picture of. So include you, your mission, your location, contact details, just core stuff. All right. And then a few cherry-picked facts, figures, and diagrams that support the story you're going to tell. And then the talk itself should be tailored to the investor persona that you really want. And there's more to investor profiling than we spoke about, but you get a rough idea. You know, if you know that you can really heavily lean into the objectivity of traction, you focus in that top left, you nail it. That doesn't mean you're not going to attract everybody else. You may well do, but it is who you lean and optimize for. Okay. Focus on, you know, the big problem or behavior change or invention, some key piece of validation. And then as you're telling your story, allude to things that might then invite questions. So you can say, oh, and we're having loads of progress in hiring, particularly in the AI world right now. And then you move on. Somebody's going to say, so who are you hiring? And you can say, well, it's a good job you asked me that, because I just happen to have their LinkedIn profile up here. And it's like you can invite kinds of questions that make sense to your business. There's so much more to say, but that's an hour. There you go. Hopefully that was helpful. Vasily, over to you.
Oh, that's it. That's it. So obviously, like this has been recorded. I will share this with everyone later, especially for those who couldn't join. On Friday, those who can meet us in person should be all in your calendar invites. And again, would be an opportunity for you to answer some of the questions in terms of how things are going to be happening on the day. And yes, on Monday, we're coming together with some investors so you can potentially do some networking prior to the event. Hopefully, again, like this will help. Another thing that I think mentioned a couple of times, but just in case it wasn't clear. So when Chris was talking about the part where the moment you off the stage, someone is gonna replace you and people will forget about you immediately. So we are trying to see if we can actually make a difference on this. So all the attendees, especially investors, when they check in on the day, they will get their kind of like number cards, pretty much similar to the auction. An idea is that once your pitching session is over, we will ask the audience to raise their numbers if they're interested in talking to you. We will take a picture, and then after the event, since we have all the contact details, we will make introductions. So hopefully this will help some of you to actually stay remembered for a little bit longer and make some connections after. Obviously, none of this is guaranteed if this is going to work, but we also noticed this problem last time, and we are trying to see if we can actually make a difference here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, any other questions, feel free to ask on the WhatsApp group, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much. Chris, legend. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Definitely was much more than I was expecting from the call. It's almost like a masterclass.
It's my pleasure. I know a few people have questions they wanted to speak. I'm happy to hang on for another 15 minutes if anybody wants to chat.
Yeah, I'm definitely also, I can say. So whoever have questions, feel free to ask.
Can I speak?
You are speaking.
Yeah, hi Chris, nice to meet you. We're already connected on the LinkedIn. It's really informative chat. I have a very specific question regarding the chatbot. So AI chatbot. So to what extent can AI chatbot in the industry perform? Can AI chatbot completely replace humans or only partially replace them?
Well, I'll start with an easy one, eh? For the record, I'm not an expert in many aspects of that question. So I've done my fair share of machine learning. I've done my fair share of the infrastructure. Like I am I have enough knowledge to be dangerous, not enough knowledge to be an expert. I don't really know. From an investor's community point of view, there's two camps. There are those that believe AI are literally going to replace humans and humans move into more creative professions. They are the glue of the solution as opposed to the solution themselves. That's the language being used in the venture world. And there are those like me that believe it's going to be a very, very precise and effective tool. We're going to get very narrow solutions to very specific problems through AI, and AI is a very broad term. I believe we're going to get very, very specific tools which are incredibly effective that augment the human. That's my opinion. Now, there are very strong investments going in both directions, and no one really knows where it's going to go. And there's also generally an emerging camp, actually, a third camp that believes it's all a bunch of nonsense. It's just yet another tool, just like cloud was, just like blockchain is. It's just yet another thing that won't actually materially change much. Of course, it will advance it would speed up progress, and we'll have all kinds of technological advancements, but the world isn't really going to change as a result. Now, I don't know is the answer to the question.
Thank you very much, Chris. That's already very good answer. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Who hasn't spoken? So Niall, I know you have, but go for it.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thanks. I had a really quick and probably really stupid question.
Not all.
But do investors care what you're wearing and look like? As in, yeah. Do you smarten up, or do you dress down, or yeah? So, like I said, stupid quick question.
Great. It's actually a brilliant question.
That's brilliant.
It's a brilliant question for many reasons. It's right in my wheelhouse of fascination at the moment. I was so tempted to include this in the talk, whatever. It's not a talk. I'm just jabbering. There's three psychological biases that I'm falling in love with, and I'm researching very deeply. One is called the halo bias. Another is called the affinity bias. Another one's called loss aversion bias. And these are human biases that everybody has in one form or another that develop between the ages of 3 and 7. So our environment, our upbringing, our value set affects how these biases manifest in later adulthood. Now, one of these biases, the affinity bias, essentially says the more familiar or similar I am to the person speaking, the more credible that person will be to me. And affinity can be something like, there's a reason I wear this fucking shirt. It's not because I taught at Harvard in 2011. I haven't been back since. But I wear it in case anyone from Harvard looks at this and they go, "Ooh, you're a Harvard person too." And I'm like, well, for about 3 months. But you create this affinity very intentionally so that when somebody speaks to you, they're more likely to take you seriously than otherwise. And affinity takes many different forms. So affinity can be college you went to. It can be, this is frustrating but true. It can be the color of your skin. It can be your background. It can be all these kind of things that perpetuate feedback loops of decision making, which are either positive or highly toxic. And so, yes, what you wear matters because it signals a potential affinity to whoever you're speaking to. Mark Zuckerberg wears his hoodie very deliberately to form affinity with a very particular audience. So if you want to be taken seriously by bankers, you wear a suit. If you want to be